Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in. Always grateful to be here, and I'm so glad that you are too. So, I'm feeling so inspired this afternoon, and so many things going on inside of my head with all the things that are going on in the world. And again, they're always going on. There are just some times where I see them and we collectively experience them more than others. So, and I keep saying that, and I think it's really important to keep saying, because I think it's really important to hear that when the world feels upside down for you, it's easy to think that the world didn't feel upside down yesterday, and it didn't for you. But for many it did. So keeping that in mind, and in so many ways when the world feels upside down, it feels upside down, and the feeling of it being upside down, of course, is going on inside of our minds. And I have come to really understand this concept of mindset and what is happening in the mind. So much in the mind. Certainly, that's more of at an existential level, more than anything, to talk about it. So, anyway, thinking related to the topic of what's going on in the world and all of the many things that are going on in the world right now, and thinking through the immense frustration that many people are feeling right now, this immense outrage, I would call it. I don't even know if that's the best word, the most accurate, but this intense, overwhelming outrage that people are feeling and expressing, right? At the end of the day, it's really about expressing outrage and demonstrating it, showing the outrage, showing the anger, the upset, and not knowing how to do it that's always a question, right? What's the best way to show my feelings? What's the best way to demonstrate my feelings, ultimately? And I myself find myself very frustrated and uncertain often. And one of the ways that I recognize I manage the difficulties that go on in the world is I simply don't watch them. I simply limit my exposure to them. And the main way that I do this is I limit my exposure to social media and the news. And I am super intentional about the social media that I take in and the news that I take in. Specifically, what news I listen to, what channels, what stations I listen to, and how much. I don't know, as I'm on this lovely walk today out at one of my current favorite spots, the pier, I have the awareness that my limiting of the content, my limiting of taking in the content, could be seen as a form of denial, right? It's a form of denial. I don't know. I'm wrestling with that today. I'm wrestling with that. Is my decision to not watch the news and my decision to not be exposed to social media or to have serious limits on it, is that a part of denying what's going on? I don't know. Bigger picture, my awareness of it is that when I do watch it, when I do expose myself, even movies, I watch a movie and I'll watch something that's less intense to the topics that are going on right now, and if I watch something that's on water, let's just go with can't think of the name of this one I watched not that long ago, Deep Water. I don't think that's the name of it. It's deep. It's got water. Anyway, it's about one of the southern states, Virginia, something, in that area, taking in toxic water. Essentially, some company DuPont, anyway, I don't want to misquote, but a large corporation letting out toxic chemicals into the water system, and the water system becoming so toxic that people developed all kinds of radical sicknesses over a year's time span. And the process of uncovering this activity, this behavior, this allowance that this company did, and that being brought out into the light, and people finding out about it, and then all the subsequent reactions to it, and the lawsuits, and all of the stuff that followed, and all of the major medical, and the families that, just suffered greatly. When I left that movie theater after watching that movie, I was a mess. Like, I was so outraged. I was so upset. And I was so like, is this really still happening? Are people really still doing this kind of insane, crazy bullshit? And the fascinating thing is, like, yes, of course, yes, all of those things are still happening in the world. And it is mind-blowing to me that these kinds of things are still happening. It's mind-blowing, and yet it's really not. Big picture, aerial view. I mean, there's so many things we could point to and say, like, things are getting better. And there are just as many things we could point to and say, like, things are getting much worse. Anyway, so much for me, my awareness for myself personally is that so much of it is truly about what goes on in your mind. I've been working with a coach over the past year, a business coach. Anyway, her in my own transformation of going through her program and learning the details of getting started with my business, it's allowed me to really have a much better understanding of this concept of mindset, and that I have actually convinced myself that everything is mindset, and perspective, like so many words you can use to describe mindset, but mindset, perspective, worldview, the lens that you use, all of these words, I feel like it's basically the same thing, but it's this understanding that the way in which we interpret information, the way that we take in data into our brains is, and then translate the data, that ultimately that is our reality. I mean, not to get too existential about it, but ultimately all of the way that we take in data and the way that we process the data becomes our reality. And I have just become so convinced that, like, everything comes down to the way that we view it and the way that we interpret it and the then words that we use to articulate it and describe it. And I've become so keenly aware of my language. It's not something I've perfected, obviously, but I want to state that out loud and recognize I will forever be a work in progress. And there will always be room to develop and to grow. Disclaimer. Because, well, I just believe that's a fact, that I will always be a work in progress. So I'm sure a lot of the language that I use even now, even in this video, in the future, my future self will look back and watch some of my content now and be like, man, I can't believe you said those things, or I can't believe you used that language. So I recognize that 100% that I'm a work in progress. So anyway, back to the bigger picture here, this concept of mindset. And do you have a mindset that allows for you to be the person that you really truly want to be? Do you have a mindset that allows you, this buzz phrase that I feel like I hear everywhere, and it's because I'm in the coaching world so much, but this mindset and abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. It's like everywhere in my view, but it has helped me to understand so many things that I do, and the framework that I do them, the approach in which I come to them, being falling into one of those two categories. I mean, at the end of the day, basically, things generally do fall into one of two categories. If you had to pick one of two categories, which I think is one of those most definitely limiting views that there actually are just two mindsets or two categories. Anyway, so yeah, this concept, this buzz phrase, these phrases of mindset being mindset, abundance mindset or scarcity mindset. And do you understand those concepts? And do you see how they impact you? And do you have someone else in your life who helps you to point out where you are getting tripped up by your scarcity mindset or by the scarcity perspective? And I think that is like one of the most essential things for becoming a healthier, for being the healthiest person that a person can be. Like for myself, that is my life goal. My life statement is easily summed up in, I want to be the healthiest in every way possible that I can be for the remaining time that I am on the planet. That is the easiest way to state my life mission / vision for myself at this point in my life, is to truly be the healthiest without being extreme in my mind, right? Some people, I'm sure, look at me and think I'm super extreme considering all the things that I've done lately, and some of the mindsets that I have and the thoughts and the values that I have, some of them are pretty extreme. And I'm actually radically okay with those and the way that I am. I'm actually like radically the best I've felt about myself in 42 years. So that is a very powerful mindset to have, to approach life from the mindset, from the vantage point, the viewpoint that I am in the best state, in the best condition I have ever been in my entire life. It's very exciting. So, circling back, I'm sure you've caught on by now, I think 1,000 things, and as much time as I've spent focusing and training my mind, and I still have 1,000 ideas, and I'm totally okay with that. It's going to bring in the people who can appreciate that I have 1,000 ideas, and the rest of you, totally fine. Unfriend me, please. Anyway, big picture, this whole thing of what's going on right now, and like my own frustration and my own like, oh man, I have no idea what to say or how to respond, or how to have a voice in the conversation, how to have something useful to say in the conversation, or it's not really a conversation going on right now. I mean, honestly, I would not call it a conversation. I would call it the expression of not being seen. Actually, that's what I would call it. I would call it the expression of not being seen, and the expression of not being heard, and the expression of not belonging. And I can so relate. At a fundamental level, I can so relate to all of those experiences. And yet, of course, I am not comparing my experience to anyone else's experience. I'm simply putting the human experience into words and articulating it from my own vantage point and my own personal experience. And I feel that level of frustration. I can be completely consumed with outrage when I put myself in the space of things that I find outrageous. And I honestly haven't even watched the most recent couple of situations that have happened this past week. I haven't even watched the videos. I talked to a friend this morning, and she was telling me how horrific the video was from last week, and that she almost couldn't watch it herself, that she almost couldn't even watch it. It was so horrific and made her feel so just horrible. And it's funny, I mean, it's so, not funny, it's an interesting comment, and it really resonated and like stuck with me. And the reality is like, I don't need to actually watch the video of what happened last week, because I have like lots of other videos of the same activity, the same incident, the same death happening. Like, I've seen several of them. So I can just pull one of those up in my mind and replay it. And so I'm like, well, do I need to watch the video? And what's the point? What is the purpose behind my watching the video? Because what I know the video will leave me with, and I can feel it brewing actually in my chest, even right now as we're talking about it, it will leave me in this hyped up state of utter frustration, outrage, irritation with human beings, frustration with how it is we still manage to function in so much crazy and insanity and act like we just, there's so many words I could use, so many words, but this basic concept of like that we are functioning in still so much discord, disconnection, unawareness, and I don't know, there's so many things I could say, right? Like greed, selfishness, unknowing, stupidity, ignorance. I don't know if those are even really accurate anymore. I would really have to consider them. Like, I'd really have to think those through, if those are words that I would even... At the end of the day, it's really about not belonging. And when any person feels like they don't belong, they're going to act. They're going to respond to it. And it is going to be expressed in 1,000 different ways. And when people don't feel heard, people don't feel seen, there will be a reaction to that. Like, in every situation where people don't feel seen and heard, they will react to it. Anyway, I am mostly doing this video because there have been so many times in my life where I'm like, man, what would I have done if I lived back in the 60s? You know, and there's all of this racial discord going on. Where would I have shown up? How would I have shown up? Being a white woman. And how, it's like, I'm reading Untamed right now, and one of the things that she's saying is, you can't not show up. At the end of the day, if you're not showing up, if you're not participating in the conversation, then you're contributing to the discord, and you're contributing to the problem. But I tend to think that's true. I still feel that way in general. I still feel like if you're not part of the problem, if you're part of, the saying, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I think silence oftentimes represents lack. Silence is an action. Let me say it that way. Silence is a reaction. Like, one's silence is a response. So, anyway, I know I'm doing, like, as Glennon Doyle might say, I'm doing something that's hard. And it is only hard in the sense that I'm literally choosing to put myself into the conversation, and choosing to put myself into the conversation when it's hot. It's hot out there. Like, super fucking burning hot. But, like, I don't know what else to do. And my mom is sending me an article, as my mom is absolutely infamous for doing, sending articles, collecting data to share with the people that she loves. So if you've received an article, newspaper, or email from my mother, know that you are well loved. On things that white people can do to be a useful part of the conversation on race. And I want to be useful. And I want to be a contributor to good and change and movement towards a better world. I know that the more I have worked on my own mindset and the more I continue down my own path of personal growth and transformation, I am seeing more good in the world. And that is like amazing. It's kind of mind-blowing. Actually, it's mind-blowing for me. I truly, 20 years ago, I would have been like, we are fucked. And we are going, I would have just talked about it like hell on earth. And at the time, I had more of strong stances on different things related to my faith. And anyway, not to get sidetracked or distracted with that topic, and definitely something for another video I'm looking forward to doing. But man, I'm starting to see like way more good in the world. But that's also because I have become so incredibly intentional and deliberate with everything that I do. And I think it's a good thing. Overall, I know it's a good thing. I have a lot to learn, and I have so much ahead of me to figure out. And at the end of the day, I already know there are horrible things going on in the world every day, every minute of the day. But I think my state of being is the state of being that I am in now, I know is contributing way more positive flow into the world than it was a hot minute ago when I was seeing so much not good, and when I was in my own personal state of miserable. And even over the past 20 years, I would go as bold as to say, when I used to think we were hopeless, when I used to think that the world was hopeless and all going to hell, I use that very loosely and intentionally. When I used to think that way, and I used to think like only a few were going to make it out alive, I am definitely getting into some exciting territory here by saying this, but more to come. But when I used to think that only a few were going to make it out alive, I walked with a lot more fear. I walked with a lot of fear. I walked with a lot of fear for myself. I walked in a lot of fear for others. And I walked in a lot of fear for the world. My views have radically changed on several fronts. And now I walk with a lot less fear. And I know that by my literal tangible experience of my everyday, that I spend, my state of being is full of, I hate to even use the word positive energy. Man, I'm gonna have to really think about how to describe it. But like my general state of being is, wow, I feel like I'm caught with my pants down. What is my general state of being? This is my general state of being. Like this person that you're seeing right here and that you've been hearing from and watching and following, this is my general state of being. What word would I slap on it? I'm not sure I have a label to slap on this general state of being. Oh, love. I walk with a general state of being of love. Ironically, more now than I have ever felt in 42 years of being alive. And all of my life experiences, and I grew up in an institution that the number one thing that it was speaking on was love, or at least that was my perception at the time. So my thoughts and lots of my views have evolved over time, and I feel the most connected to the heart of my faith, the faith that I was raised on, more than I have in 42 years. And I also know that there are a lot of people, probably a lot of people who would say that I'm the most lost or the farthest away. I don't know. I don't know what people would say, and honestly, it's totally not my place to judge or assume what people think. But I know years and years ago I was taught to believe that people who were not regularly doing X, Y, and Z needed help, that they were lost and that they needed to be converted. So I no longer hold that view, as I have now evolved and become one of these people who's no longer doing X, Y, and Z. However, at the same time, what I can tell you is I am the most in line with being a loving person and being the type of person that I feel like I was meant to be, and I truly feel like my upbringing intended to teach me how to be. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and go there because like I'm already at 25 minutes, and so if you're watching now, like I love you. And whether we fall on the same side of any of these topics that I've brought up or not, I love you for listening. And I appreciate you spending time getting to know me and hearing what I have to say. And getting emotional, so I'm losing my train of thought. But that I feel the most in line with myself and being love and the fundamental core concepts of what I truly believe my upbringing and my religious group intended for me to be. When you think about what I've done over the last couple of years, right? Hear me. Without referencing or consciously thinking back to my religious upbringing and the teachings and the people in the philosophy and the religion that I grew up in, without intending to be doing the things that Jesus did, I'll just go ahead and say it. In the last couple of years, I mean, I haven't been to church in, I don't even know now, 5 years. I mean, I go with my parents because I love them and want to be doing family things, and certainly respect for the church and all that they intend and good that they want to bring into the world. It's just not part of my life now, or part of my day to day. But in the last 2 years, I have left a job that I felt like was literally slowly killing me. My decision to continue being there was my staying, I was slowly dying. And so I came to a point of responsibility that I needed to leave, because I was the only one responsible for whether or not I lived or died. And if I truly thought that place was killing me, and the work that I was doing and the various things that were going on there were impacting me at that level, well, then it was my responsibility to get me out of there. And so I did. And I sold my house. And then I went on to sell most of my possessions. It's so funny. I just had this awareness in the last few weeks that that's actually what I've done. I mean, in the context of my religious upbringing and faith and the teachings that I was taught as a child. And I was like thinking about it in these last couple of weeks, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fascinating. Without intending to have that connection to the teachings of my upbringing, here I have gone and done these things in pursuit. My number one reason for leaving those things and essentially creating an escape path to get out of that life that I was living, and created a new path into this new life that I am now living and created for myself. My number one goal was to be more loving. I realized that I had gotten to a point where I had gotten so misaligned, I had gotten so numb, that I was no longer feeling alive. And not only was I not feeling alive, I was feeling in my body that I was dying, right? We already all know we're dying. Like, We're all dying. We're all moving towards the end, to death.